Unfortunately, I won't see your comments or chat or anything like that, and myself. So I don't know what's going on because when I moved to the countryside for a month, I didn't know I will do a speech. As Nicole said, some people start somewhere, and today is my start. This is my first time speaking publicly about Power Platform, and this is my topic that I picked together with David. Um, that a few things I wish I have known when I started as a citizen developer. So I will talk about more towards Canvas apps, citizen developers, app makers, not the professional ones, the pro code guys. And so yeah, I think we can start now. It's 55, so it's my time. If you have any questions, you can come off mute, or I don't know how it works here, but let's get started. So in the first slide, just about me, how I started. So you will see my journey. This is like an after lunch, bit more chilly, not so hands-on presentation or session. So it's my journey, my mess ups during my citizen developer life. So in 2018, that's when I started with Power Platform. I saw it in the app launcher, top left corner. I was like, what is this Power Apps and Flow? And okay, let's get to know it. And I started to click in on it and play around with it. I will use play around a lot because that's how I would phrase my doing in Power Platforms at the first 1-2 years that I was playing around. And so back then I was a senior business analyst working mainly with non-Microsoft products such as SAP, MicroStrategy, and other tools and data in a global finance function. And someone just came up to me, and I will talk about that later, how I created my first app. And I was like, okay, this will be a good candidate for Power Apps. And that's how I started. And then in 2019, I moved into an automation role, robotic process automation, again, not with Power Platform. So I used UiPath, and I was a business analyst and a productivity lead. And I was still playing around as an app maker. So I will use citizen developer, app maker. I think these are synonyms. And so non-IT guy who is creating something in Power Platform. And still just doing, creating apps and so on. And last year, 2021, I landed the first remote full-time developer role in the Power Platform field. And that's when I got certified. I did all the certification except the foundations. You will see my thought process later on, so you'll understand my thoughts on this. And I became a Microsoft certified trainer, I think June last year. Certifications are great, and the learnings as well. So you will know a bit later about those. And 2022, this year, I joined AppFi, which is a Belgian company, again, remotely as a low-code rebel. I'm the first low-code rebel, so I am placed a Belgian company for a full-time staffing. So now I'm enjoying the new low-code rebel title, which is amazing because I was just in a lots of group coaching a few years ago, and I always said that I'm a rebel and I like to do things differently outside of the box, and all these cliche. And it's just nice that now I have it as a job title. Okay, so that's about me. It's only focusing on Power Platform. I'm more than that, of course, like everyone else, but that's now just my introduction. So you now see my journey in this. So what relevant experience I had when I created my first app? I had a decent Excel one. So I was able to do like huge Excel files, a lot of functions, and a decent VBA also. I had some PowerPoint. You can see now I'm not a PowerPoint guru. I will not do any YouTube videos on how to create nice presentations. That's not me. I had some, I could create. I still can create. It's just the PowerPoint is not my tool. I had some UX, but from a different perspective. So I was as a user that were participating in tests. There is a company in Hungary who are doing user experience tests, and you can apply as a user. And so that's why I say I had some user experience, and that's when like I could use it in Power Platform just to flip it around, and I think that's a great way to do it. I had zero SharePoint when I started, so I came from a completely non-IT background. I did some programming when I was young, but I never had an IT role until last year. And I had zero SharePoint in the company I worked and started Power Platform. Did use SharePoint, but not not really heavily. We used it as sites and pages, some information, but not. It wasn't heavily used. And I had zero Dynamics, so we were mainly using SAP and non-Microsoft products. Even OneDrive was. I don't think we had OneDrive back then. So we were using Box and Zoom and old non-Microsoft products, and so zero Dynamics and zero UI. And it a bit connected to my PowerPoint skills, but the UI, I saw phone applications, I saw web pages, I created web pages for myself and things like that, but not the, a strong UI or user interface foundation. So this is how I started, and this is what I had in my toolbox. So my first app, I got the request. Someone walked up to me from the learning department and just told me, like, Máté, I have a huge Excel matrix with skills, job profiles, skill levels, and trainings. And it was, when she meant it's a huge Excel matrix, it was huge. Like, we had 80 different job profiles, 30 something skills. Each skills had 3 levels, and each skills and levels had 10, 15 trainings attached to it. So if you do the math, that's big. And the question was that, or the request was, the original request was to create a VBA, create a front end for this Excel so people can filter for their job profile, filter for their skills. And I was like, okay, this is 2018. It would look so dated if we would just put VBA script or a macro front of it. So that's when I was like, okay, let's find something else. I clicked before to the Power Apps, so I knew that it exists, but I just created something, but I wouldn't call it an app. So I was like, okay, this is a good candidate for proof of concept or an MVP, or you can name it. So how I started with the solution, I put it here, solution, not the solution that Nicole showed you the session before. So my solution was I created a VBA to convert the Excel so Power Apps would understand it, the context, and I just did like transpose and move stuff around with VBA. And yeah, I added the Excel as a static file, which means you cannot add stuff in there. It's just there and you can read it. And it comes with the Power Apps. It's not stored in OneDrive or SharePoint or anywhere. It's just there, added to the Power App. So it's like the most basic thing you can do, unless you hard code. It's really close to hard coding something in a function, but this is like the hard code version 2 when you hard code it with Excel. So I added it as a static file. It means you couldn't do anything with it. And I just created a front end for the consumption or the display, so people can, navigate through, select their stuff, and with Office 365 users, you can interface with the job title, and it was, working. And of course, asked for help from an in-house graphic designer to make it look good, because I created it and it's like, yeah, okay, it looks just 5% better than an Excel with a macro. So I had someone to tweak it a bit, add some nice, branding and pictures, so it looks good, or looks better. And yeah, since it was, a bunch of trainings and job profiles and skills, the rest, or the most of the things didn't change, but the trainings and the links to the trainings did change a lot. So whenever you needed to change, you needed to get notified by the learning department. You needed to run the VBA again. You needed to delete the old data source, so the old Excel file, and add the new data source. And you cross the fingers that nothing got messed up in your application. So this is how I started. And now I would do everything completely differently. But back then, I think it was good enough. And I think 4 years later, it still works. I'm not with that company anymore, but I heard it still works. So it's good. It's a functioning mess. So it works, but it's a mess. And I think no one else would understand. Or I mean, I'm pretty sure they would, but it wasn't done nicely. That's what I want to what I want to say about that. Yes, the learning curve in Power Apps. I thought, like I like tools, I can learn it. It's not a problem. And yeah, it's easy but not easy. So just keep that in mind. They will say to you that okay, it's low code, it's no code, it's easy, but it does have a learning curve. And just based on my experience, if you coming from Excel, if you know Excel, the Excel formula can translate it into Power FX. And as you see here, all the green ones are the same in Excel. So if you know those, you can reuse it in Power FX, which is almost like 50% of the Power FX formula that is available. So that's a good start. If you have a decent or a good Excel background, you already have a jump start. And just keep that in mind that Power FX, it's like an Excel. I usually say it like Power Apps is PowerPoint plus Excel, or when these two meet. So you have a PowerPoint-like UI you put together, and then you put Excel formula to make it move, to make it interactive. And yeah, so that's one learning curve when you're coming from Excel. When you're coming from VBA I use VBA because like most of Office users use it if you are like want to automate something in Office. That's how I started. Or any other programming languages. This is low code, so it means that it will have workarounds and some frustration compared to programming languages. And for example, creating a for loop in Power Apps, it's just like the workarounds of flicking a toggle automatically to do the iterations and using something else. And in VBA, it's this big. In Power Apps, you need controls and need like a toggle flicking. And yeah, it's not for all the things, but it's evolving. So when it was 2017, 2018, compared to now, it's much better today. And if in case you have no Excel or VBA or any other coding, then the learning curve could be steep. So even though I'm a full-time low-code developer, if I go to any other tools like Glide, Bubble, Webflow, Zapier, Integromat, you name it, I still need to relearn those tools. So it doesn't mean like, okay, I know low code, I know something else. You need to learn it, and it's still low code, but you still need to learn the bits and pieces and the small bits here and there. Learning experience. For me, trial error. That's how I started. I did a jump start, like, okay, let's do it. And so for me, it was trial and error and practice. And you just try something, didn't work. You try somewhere different, and this is what you can do. And how I would do it now, and how I did it back then a little bit. You have Microsoft Learn, you have YouTube with really good content creators all around. I didn't want to mention anyone because it's just I didn't want to leave everyone or anyone out. So just go try to put Power Apps or your problem into YouTube search, and it will give out some great recommendation and great content. And since the tool is ever evolving, it's all the time evolving. It can happen that if something was there uploaded 3 years ago, it might not be relevant because it got removed from the tool, or it just done differently today. So for example, you cannot navigate from OnStart. and back then that was the only way that you could navigate in the start of the app. That's just an example. You can have blogs as well. If you prefer written form, blogs are the way to go. So you can just search on Google, on Bing or DuckDuckGo or your search engine. You can have training providers, virtual or in person. And like these are usually exam preparation trainings. So from 1 day or a few hours to 5 days for the, or maybe no, 5 days. And usually these are costly, and Microsoft sometimes have some free trainings. So just go for the Microsoft Events website and you will see some virtual training days for free sometimes. And you have also the Udemy Plural site, LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning just started to sponsor now some free Power Platform courses. So you might take a look at that as well. And community, we will get back to that later, but community is really good for your learning experience as well. Yeah, jumping in without learning. That's how I did. Trial and error. It's hard. And I think after a while, you will need to ask for help, whether it's YouTube or anything learning. But to echo Nicole's previous 5 steps, you need to learn it. So sometimes some parts are intuitive enough to do or use, but some parts I just need some, a better understanding because you cannot figure out on your own. I mean, I couldn't. You have the template apps. I would say I said it's without learning, but template apps could be a good way because it's not like a formal learning. And you have the built-in Power Apps Learn in there and learn how to create apps. So it's not anything from the previous slide, but it's built in your Power Apps main screen. Community. So what I thought was like, okay, what I see with other tools, like I don't want to name any of them, but what I saw is just like close community. You need a subscription, or you need I don't know, 10 years of experience, or they will tell you like, okay, if you have a question, just search first, and like really rigid communities. And that's what I thought, like, okay, and this is a new tool. I don't think that anyone is using it because I didn't, connect it to the Dynamics 365. But now I know that it's great. It's really good. It's really helpful and supporting. So whenever you go to Power Users or Reddit or LinkedIn, you ask a question and someone will be there to, hey, this is how you do it. Not like, okay, go and search, go to Google, let me Google that for you, or any other tools. But that's how I felt, and it's really welcoming. And what you can do with community is you can go to boot camps, like now. You can go to in-person or virtual conferences. There are user groups which do calls, webinars, happy hours, meetups, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, which you can join. To be honest, I think it was last year when I found out this community is great, because before I always had that previous assumption that it's like, oh, okay, who am I to ask a question? Who am I to do anything? So that's was last year. And sometimes I was like, okay, I go to the East Coast US call at 1 a.m. in the morning and from Hungary, and then next day I go to the UK happy hour, and I was like traveling during the lockdowns between happy hours and webinars, and it was so great because everyone was welcoming and just really felt like I'm part of the community. You can have user groups. These are on the Microsoft Power Users website or community website where you can join them. Usually each country has one, but there are sometimes like when countries got together or communities got together, or in bigger countries they have per city user groups or per area user groups. We have the hackathons. This is something I joined last year as well. I think this was my jumpstart. Like, okay, this is so great. The community is so good. So I think the one of the global hackathons will take place in March or April, virtually, and is part of the Power Platform School. to help the students create solutions. So they give experts and professionals who already work with Power Platform. So I think it's a really good thing for networking, to create something, to spend your Saturday creating Power Apps or Power Automate in 4 to 5, 6 hours. It's really good. I had a blast last year. I can't wait for this year. And yeah, internal community, meaning in your company. So to try to look for a Yammer group, a Teams channel or Teams team, and if available, if not available, try to recruit people. Like, hey, I saw you created an app. Can we talk about it? Or I think it's when you are the first, or you are in the first 10 people who start to use it, it's usually a good thing that, yeah, I'm a pioneer. I do something that no one else does, and you can be the first one there. That's not a problem. So be proactive in that. And I saw in the chat in the previous one. So what if you don't want to use Dataverse? What are the data sources available? As I mentioned, I used Static Excel for my very first app. It's okay to use. I mean, to be honest, I don't want to be the know-it-all here to say like, oh, this is not good, that's good. Pick whatever you want to pick. Just know the limitations. So Static Excel, if it's a data that doesn't change for a year, just put it out there. If you want to give a better look, or it's just master data supporting your app, why not just have it there? You can have Excel or in SharePoint or OneDrive, just Excel files with table, but you have SharePoint list and Microsoft list as well. So between these two, I would always pick SharePoint lists and Microsoft lists, except this week I created an MVP on Excel and SharePoint because that was the data available and I didn't want to just have a SharePoint list created for it. So I used Excel and SharePoint for the proof of concept. So it can be used. The SharePoint list is just have a better security, permissions. You can have item level security in there. So that's my pick. You can have SQL. The companies that I worked for didn't use SQL for Power Apps, so I cannot comment on that. I know some companies will use this one and this one only. As I said, I didn't see the use case for myself that I need to use. And you have Dataverse and Dataverse for Teams. Dataverse, of course, it's a premium connector, and the premium, you need the premium subscriptions per user or per app. But Dataverse for Teams comes with a new theme, 2 gigabytes of storage and 1 million rows. Of course, I would call it the Dataverse Lite, and can be used for a lot of MVPs and even like functioning good applications. Just bear in mind some of the limitations, and always if you want to upgrade it, you can just take that Dataverse for Teams and upgrade it to regular or normal Dataverse. And yes, that's important. Learn about the limitation, the cost, and what is available at your company. So many of the times when you have this app in a day or these kind of courses and seminars, they will tell you like Dataverse, and you go back to your company like, we don't have Dataverse and we are not planning to use Dataverse for 2 years. So that's why it's really important to know about the limitations and know about the rest, because when I started, I only knew about Static Excel. So, and as you can see, there are a lot more. And plus the connectors, you have 400 plus more connectors. Except on top of these. Security. Oh, yeah, that's a great topic. As I didn't come from an IT background, IT security was like, always there because we got the emails from IT and everything else. But when I started to create the apps, I didn't know about this kind of security. So I was like sharing the app with everyone. As you can see here, yeah, this is, okay, share it with everyone and then everyone will have access, no problem. And giving edit rights to all users in SharePoint list. So because I didn't know better, right? So what I should have done is sharing the app with the actual users who will actually use it or who actually need it or request access to it. And you can do it by using Power Automate or security groups, or just manually adding the people there. But I would always go for something automatic and granting the lowest required rights to the data source, whatever it could be, Dataverse, SharePoint, and taking it away when not needed. So when they just need to create something, but they don't need to edit, then after they created something, then just you can take away their edit rights and have a read-only access, things like that. So then you can do it with Power Automate, with SharePoint REST API calls. So it's up to you. So security is important. Luckily, we didn't have, or I didn't have any, data exposure out there because nothing was publicly out. But it could happen. So just take responsibility. I think that was the step one from Nico's presentation. So just think about it, and this can go wrong. Security is important, and now I know it, and just make sure that you remember that security is important. Testing, yes, that's again, I was a pioneer in a way, so we only had one environment, and means that the default environment, like when the company doesn't have a strategy for Power Apps, or the IT doesn't want to implement it or support it, or they will just, it will create automatically a default environment. And people will have environment maker rights where you can just create everything. You can delete apps, your own apps, but you can create apps, publish it. You create an app in 10 minutes, you can publish it and share it with 10,000 people or 100,000 people if your company is that big. And there is, if there is no governance in place or no center of excellence in place, this 100,000 people will have access to it and they can do stuff. And that's, it's risky. And sometimes without testing, because like, oh, I created something that is great and publish. And so what I did usability testing. So I usually said like what I did was incorrect, but I think usability testing with users is great, because Power Apps and Power Platform, I think it's a really strong user experience tool to replace paper-based processes, to replace massive Excel files, replace back and forth emails, or anything that's frustrating, that's not good for employee experience. And so I think the usability testing with users is a good point in there. But I did it, so I put it there. But I also did test in production, or I did testing after go live, or fixing stuff after go live. Not minor stuff, but major stuff, because that's when it got tested really, because I didn't know any better, right? So what I should have done, contact IT to get a UAT environment, user acceptance test environment, or if that's not available, or they don't want to get involved, but you still have a proper use case or a useful application idea, then you can just make sure that you mark it as a test application, and you put it in a piece of rectangle or in the header that this is test only. Don't create real life, requests or anything like that, because it's not going to be followed up, or the Power Automate is not connected to it, or you name it, right? So just make sure it's visible. And trying to fix bugs in the development application or test application, or those respective environments, and fixing major bugs before the go live. So don't say like, oh, okay, we can go live, it works somehow, and then you will see that, oh, this one got messed up, and then you need to fix it like an open heart surgery. It's not good. So that's what I learned about testing and as a whole. Forms. I'm sorry, I'm jumping between topics, but now we are getting more into into the Power Apps. So the forms are the next topic, which is a control in Power Apps, and usually connected to any kind of. Yes. Do you have a question? Someone just got off mute. Okay, then I will keep on talking. So the forms are a control, or a forms is a control in Power Apps, where you can create new item on a SharePoint list, edit new item, or edit item, or display item. And it would, if I would come from a SharePoint background, it would make 100% sense and a lot sense to use it. But since I didn't come from that SharePoint or InfoPath or anything like that background, I put it on my Power App and I was like, this is, really rigid, really square. No, that's not for me. It's not so customizable. And it looked dated as well. So like, okay, it's, as I said, like really square and looking, and like, you cannot do anything with it. So instead I used galleries for displaying stuff, if it was a list, or if I would put in individual controls like labels, text input fields, combo boxes, drop downs, toggles, and simple buttons to just create my own form for new items or edits. And I didn't realize back then, like when I construct my submit button, I need to pick up each and every control. And okay, for name, pick up the input field name. One for this, pick up this. And I was like, I didn't realize that I'm just making extra steps, a lot more extra steps than necessary, and for validation. And like, okay, then I think 2 years ago, I was like, okay, let's try out these forms. They still look not for my taste, but let's give it a go. And then I realized why we should use forms, because it has built-in validation and error handling. That's one, like, oh my God, you didn't need to do ifs for each and every field to see if it has anything in there, or error handling with if and switch statements and cases. You could do error handling if you had individual controls, but this one is built in. You just hit submit form, and then it does all that for you. To put a required toggle for one of the fields, you click required, or you set required property to true, and it will be required from then. You don't need an if statement or anything like that. It's good. It's really good. And you can have the new and edit and the display in one single control. So you create a form, and that can be reused for three different purposes. That's amazing if you think about it. And it can be customized. It's not that free than having your own individual controls, but it can be customized, and it's, if you get a hang of it, it's really easy. And you have properties like onSuccess. When you hit the submit button on your form, and you have something on onSuccess, that onSuccess will do, like, you submit something to your app and to your SharePoint list, and it will just go through, and the onSuccess will trigger when it's successfully done. So yeah, forms was a big change for me. Components, again, it's an intimidating stuff. So like, oh my God, if I change it, everything else change it. I don't know if you know the components concept, but it's like reusable controls, where you can just create here components. You can create a header, a menu, navigation, controls, and whatsoever. And it's amazing. I started to use it recently, again, 1-2 years ago, and it just changed the way I thought about it, because before I was just doing one and copy over, and now with the component library, you can share it without between apps. So with the same themes, same company colors, you can just share it between applications. And yes, just understand and learn and use the components because they are really, really great. I told about this one before, and so the templates and built-in screens are why they are good and why I haven't used them. Because I was like, yeah, I can do that, you know, like I can create whatever I want because it will be my own. I felt, you know, really proud that, oh, I can do it. And then I I realized that I don't need to be always like, okay, I can create it. Because if you use templates or built-in screens, it's a really good way to learn because Microsoft created these and they are well thought through. They have a good functionality and already built-in functionality. For example, if you see this meeting capture app, it's a meeting capture app, so you can capture stuff from the meeting, but it has more stuff. So what I did, I repurposed to be an internal Calendly application. If you know that application where you have your available slots and people can come in to your application and book a meeting with you. Of course, you can do it with Outlook and whatever. It just will create an automatic. You can pick up slots for 30 minutes, or it's just it was a use case for someone, and it was built in, I don't know, 30 minutes without a problem. So these are good tools as well. And yes, I think this is the last one, when to use it. Power Platform or Power Apps. When I started, and I think some of the people will do the same, like, oh my God, it's so good. It's amazing tool. Let's use it for everything. And then you start to build use cases and you, oh my God, I will do an ERP and a CRM and everything in a Power Platform and I will make it. And then you realize that it does have its limitations. And again, I need to echo what Nicole said. Go for the quick wins. Go for the low-hanging fruits. And just for starting, because you have like small chunks, small pieces that you can use. And then you will have quick successes. And you can get an award, an internal award in the company that, hey, you created something great. You saved 100 hours for HR with a quick automation. And just bear in mind, it has its limits. So you will come across where you need to work around, where you have lack of documentation, where you have, like from the Microsoft side, where you have a function that it should work, it doesn't work that way. So yes, just keep that in mind. And I think that was it. Done with my very first speech. So yes, I was Máté Tóth from AppFi Low-Code Rebel. These are my contact info. If you want to play around with asynchronous communication or asynchronous meetings where you don't need to be at the same time, just talk to me at Wally, the talk.wally.app/Máté Tóth, or you can find my website or LinkedIn. And yeah, I will stick around if you had any questions because I couldn't see it. Unfortunately, I didn't have a second screen.